This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Coming up on This Week in Agribusiness, the USDA surprises traders with a planting mix acreage shift. Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. In the studio this week, we will be hearing from Max Armstrong a little bit later in the program. But before we do, weather has been moving the markets for the past several weeks. In the past 2 weeks, saw some severe weather across the country. Greg Solier, meteorologist, joins us now. And Greg, the derecho event on June 29th was a severe weather event. Huge spread across the country. How widespread was it?
I tell you what, we started from a couple of storm clusters into parts of southwest Iowa and northeastern Kansas, and we'll show it here how these storms blossomed out. And the blue dots representative of wind damage and high wind reports from the Storm Prediction Center of the National Weather Service. Doesn't really tell the whole tale, by the way, into parts of eastern Illinois and western Indiana. The National Weather Service went out there, did a storm assessment to damage, and then found that there was embedded tornadic activity in that general straight line right turning thunderstorm complex alone. Winds were upwards of 70 to 80 miles per hour in some of those embedded cells, upwards of 100 to 120 mile per hour winds. An EF1 or 2 tornado may have been wrapped up in that over parts of eastern Illinois, more so western Indiana in that Wabash Valley.
Boy, it was incredible to watch develop. And Greg, how is it that these derechos go from being just a thunderstorm to a derecho?
It's a perfect storm. But we'll take a look at it here from a soup to nuts. You get a couple of thunderstorm clusters, your basic updraft, downdraft going on, and depending on the wind profile and the thermodynamics, you'll get additional thunderstorms to get going. We talked about this time and time before. They become their own little atmospheric engines. They can corrupt the whole steering currents, and on this particular go-around, it did. There's the blossoming thunderstorm activity in the second depiction here, and then lastly, you get that bowed out look. The updraft is strong, the downdraft even more, and that's where you get the rush of wind because the weight of rain and hail and the cold air as well up aloft that tends to increase with these thunderstorm outbreaks.
Absolutely. And Greg, we'll be digging into the forecast a little bit longer term here later in the program with you. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The 4-week forecast here, plenty of rain showing up on the weather maps and charts.
Well, Greg, one of the facilities in the path of that derecho was the Farm Progress Show grounds in Decatur, Illinois. We're gearing up for that Farm Progress Show at the end of August, and I wanted to check in on how things looked following that derecho. Joining us now is Matt Youngman. He's the National Events Manager for Farm Progress. And Matt, fill us in. How do things look at the show site in Decatur?
We were really fortunate there in Decatur. Just checked in with the host farmer, David Bricks, and Rick Wild, the operations manager, and everything appears to be in great shape. We survived the derecho fine. The field demo corn, was just happened to be pollinating at that time, so it got a nice drink of water. And the exhibitor parking lot wheat hadn't been cut yet. It made it through that fine, so everything made it through fine. Since then, we've actually gotten another couple rains, and so we're in really good shape.
That is good to hear, Matt, but it had to be a nerve-wracking day on that Thursday when that derecho was bearing down. What were your thoughts as you were watching the radar?
I have all of our locations, Grand Island and Boone and Decatur, set up in my phone to where I get alerts. So whenever nasty weather is heading to any of those facilities, I'm always keeping a close eye on it, especially, in these last 6-7 weeks as we approach the show. By the end of this month, there will be tents in the air, and we have the field demo corn to be concerned about. So yeah, I'm watching that very closely when those kind of weather events go through. And folks that know me would tell you that I'm pretty close to my phone watching those things as they go through.
Well, I'm glad to hear there were no major bad impacts from that derecho. Matt, you're geared up. You're ready to start welcoming people August 29th, 30th, and 31st. And we're going to have some new pavement on the grounds in Decatur. Is that right?
We are. Great partnership with Illinois Soybean to put asphalt under the Varied Industries tent. And, the Varied Industries tent is going to be bigger than it's ever been. It's never run all the way from West Avenue to Central. Well, this year it is. It's going to run from West Avenue to Central, 680 feet long. The tent is by 66 feet wide. So that's over an acre of roof. And underneath that will be that soybean asphalt to give those exhibitors in there a really nice firm base to work under. We had that with the Iowa soybean last year in Boone, and it was really well received. The exhibitors just loved it, made it a really comfortable environment in there.
It will be very nice to have dry feet all year long, regardless of what comes from the sky. Matt, if we've got audience who want to plan their trip, where should they go to do it?
FarmProgressShow.com has everything you need. You can get your hotel there, buy your advance tickets, surf your way around the map. You can also download the smartphone app. That's kind of like having the show program right there in your phone, all the information, and it doesn't require data service when you're there at the show. So even our staff uses that as a really good way to get around the show site.
That's a great point, folks. Get it on your calendar. Farm Progress Show, August 29th, 30th, and 31st. We've been talking with Matt Youngman. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
You bet.
This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. Now it's time to turn our focus to the markets. Joining us this week is Darren Newsom, Senior Market Analyst with Barchart. Darren, this past week we've seen a derecho, we've seen rain start to fall across the Corn Belt, and we saw some big reports from the USDA. Thanks for taking the time to break it down for us.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me on. And it's interesting, some of the things you mentioned matter and some of them were basically make-believe. But, we know these markets are weather derivatives. So, we start with the weather. And as you said, we saw another one of those derechos. It's interesting that, for the last 20, 30 years, we never heard much about them. Now they seem to happen almost annually across the U.S. Midwest. So I know there was some damage done. I know there's been talk of some of the damage. But right now, that seems to be put on the shelf, and what most of the focus is on continues to be the extended weather forecast. Every time we get a new 6 to 10 day, it's for cooler temps, or it's for below normal temps and above normal precipitation. And so it's a pretty good mix, pretty good sign. El Nino is in place right now across the U.S. Midwest and the plains. Certainly seems to be bringing some more precipitation to some areas that desperately needed it. Now we'll see if we, down the road, in the weeks to come, if we actually start to see some changes in these soil moisture readings.
That is a huge point, Darren. And as you mentioned, we're seeing this moisture now fall across the Corn Belt. In a regular year, that would have made this past week pretty bearish on prices. But we also had some news last Friday from the USDA that upended the soybean market. Can you fill us in on what the USDA says planted acreage was this year?
Yeah, it was interesting. I guess that's the best word, interesting, entertaining, whichever one we want to choose. But, USDA dropped its guess on soybean acres by 4 million. So it went from 87.5 from prospective plantings down to 83.5, while increasing increasing corn, another 2.1 million. So a total of 3.1 million or something like that for the year so far. Bottom line is that we've gained reportedly about 6% of corn acres from over last year. And again, this is what we should have been expecting if we watched the Nove bean Dees corn spread from September through February when the decision's made. We saw Dees corn was buying acres away, and the closest fit was 2016 when we added 7% more corn acres. So, the fact that we ultimately seem to have planted 6% more, a number that probably should have been plugged in March, at the end of March, certainly shouldn't have caught anybody by surprise. I think the biggest news was, dropping soybean acres by 4 million certainly seemed to get the market's attention, as you mentioned.
It did indeed, Darren. On the corn front, USDA did say we planted 6% more corn. We've got moisture now coming into the Corn Belt. Is this a hedging opportunity for corn growers?
Well, last week certainly was, and I always hate to say it like that, but if we were counting weeks, weather rallies tend to last about 6 weeks, and last week was week 6 in corn. This week is week 6 in soybeans. So, the spike rally certainly did provide an opportunity. I know a lot of folks were playing short-term options against already established hedges. Others used the opportunity to get some more hedges in place because, as you said, we've got the combination of more acres, better weather, presumably for the rest of summer, and then we still have a question about demand backing off. So you've got the possibility of increased supplies, less demand. Not really something that's telling us the market's going to continue to go higher.
Darren, we've got a lot to talk about on the soybean front, but before we go to break, in the wheat market, we saw some more volatility this past week. Has anything fundamental changed in wheat?
Not really. I haven't seen anything fundamentally change. The biggest thing is the hard red winter harvest is moving up into western Kansas, moving through western Kansas. And, wheat has to be proven that it's actually dead before buyers will step into the market. And once the combines got there and they found out, the abandoned acres were actually abandoned and what was left wasn't yielding all that much, we've seen the buyers come back into Kansas City, as they should. Fundamentally, the market's bullish. Now we're starting to see some traders getting interested.
All right, maybe some more to watch in that wheat story as we go forward. Folks, stay here. We'll have more with Darren Newsom, Senior Market Analyst from Barchart, in just a moment. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. We're discussing the commodity markets with Darren Newsom, Senior Market Analyst with Barchart. Darren, we were talking about the wheat market just before we went on break, and I know there are some headlines now about that Black Sea grain deal. Do we think it's going to be extended, and do we think it matters anymore?
Well, a couple interesting questions there, Mike. Number one, does it matter? No, I don't think so. Number two, it's a grain deal with Russia, so you never really know what the standing of it is, regardless of what's being said, what's being talked about. Again, let's go back. I just don't think it matters at this point. Anything of value along the Black Sea, in the Black Sea ports, has already been stolen, has already been moved. So, if we go back to last fall, there wasn't a lot of wheat planted. There wasn't a lot of corn harvested. So, we're not looking for much wheat to be harvested this summer as far as their winter wheat crop. So I don't think there's really that much in there. I don't think it's that big of a story. And we can certainly look at the Chicago soft red winter market. We've got bearish future spreads there. We don't have any demand for U.S. soft red winter supplies. And this is all telling us that, regardless of what the issue is, if there's still ships moving out of the Black Sea ports, it's just not making any difference right now with the Chicago market.
All right, Darren. Well, one market that has been bullish this past week, you talked about that acreage setup in soybeans, drop in acreage down to 83.5 million. With that being the case, November soybeans kicking around that $13.50 mark. Where do you see prices headed here, Darren?
I don't know that they're going to go much higher. So far this week, we've seen early sessions with early rallies and then faltering late. And so to me, it seems like we're running out of momentum in this market. Again, this looks to be week 6 of a six-week weather rally. So I just don't know that there's that much left. Again, demand's an issue, particularly going forward. We're not looking for much to change in the 2023-24 marketing year. Unless crush demand really explodes here, which I'm not sure it's going to. But still, I'm just not seeing much on the demand side, and it seems like supplies are going to be enough, regardless of reduced acres or whatever. It certainly seems like with weather coming around, supplies are going to be enough to meet demand at this point.
All right, then same question, Darren. 6-week weather rally, hedging time in soybeans?
Yeah, I think the market has changed it's changed its psychology here to sell the rallies rather than buy the dips. And so, yeah, if we can continue to see, some early double-digit gains in the NOV crop and the NOV contract, I think we want to take advantage of that, get some more sales on the books, because we could be looking at a market coming under pressure here over the next few weeks if weather continues to play out.
All right, Darren, let's turn our focus over to the proteins. Coming out of the 4th of July holiday, a lot of beef was on grills across the country. We've seen record or near record prices for cattle here over this summer. Can those price levels continue, Darren?
They can. Will they? I don't know. We're starting to see boxed beef back off. Again, it's not a huge surprise. We've come, basically the buying season for grilling season has peaked. And we could start to see this back off a little bit as we head through the latter half of summer and so on. So it wouldn't be too surprising. The markets look a little bit top heavy, both live cattle and feeder cattle. I think cash has been a bit tentative coming out of the holiday, so we'll see what develops as the week goes on. But to me, the sector as a whole, except for hogs, the cattle markets as a whole look a bit top heavy. It could start to work lower in here.
Darren, would you be looking at hedging some live cattle in those deep deferred months where we still have some premium?
I don't want to be the first one to sell this market. It's proven over the last year that those who sell first usually pay the most. So I do still like the options. I still like put options in this. I think you can lock in some pretty good profits until we get a clear sell signal, either on long-term charts or even weekly charts. I don't want to be the first one in there selling, but I do continue to roll put options higher.
All right, that's Darren Newsom, Senior Market Analyst with Barchart. Darren, thanks for joining us this week.
As always, Mike, thanks for having me on again.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Summertime can be a great time to get a jump on some of those projects that stack up at harvest. Our tech correspondent Chad Colby has one good one to think about.
Is all your equipment ready for the busy harvest season? One thing I've learned over the years is there's some different ways to look at maintaining your equipment. And maybe that's a late model tractor, 2 or 3 year old tractor, or maybe it's a 10-year-old tractor. But a lot of companies offer a great system to do a fluid scan on your equipment. And I highly encourage you to talk to your local farm implement dealership, regardless of what color the equipment is, and get a kit from them. It's pretty inexpensive to do. And basically, it's pretty self-explanatory. You're going to draw engine oil, other types of fluid, maybe even coolant, hydraulic, transmission, everything essentially, and send it in. Now, I've had a lot of experience with that, and if you haven't done it before, the detail you get back is pretty intense. And we all know the high cost of having a machine down. This is a great way to do some preventative maintenance. My experience with fluid scans comes from aviation. I've owned a few aircraft over the years, and it's pretty commonplace in these aircraft, especially the one you're looking here. This is a 1963 model, to make sure that you check that engine essentially at every oil change. And it's the same way in ag or even construction. You get back a real detailed look at what issues you might be having. The nice part is you're going to know if something is failing, whether that's a bearing or a valve or whatever it might be. And I also can't help to think that if you're at a farm sale and you're watching a piece of equipment sell and it's got a history of oil scans, I think that's going to build some confidence in that purchase. As many of you are getting ready for the busy harvest season, talk to your dealer. Take a look at doing some fluid scans. It might catch a problem early, give you an opportunity to fix it maybe a little more economically, and most importantly, it'll save you that valuable downtime during the busy harvest season. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. As always, great suggestions for staying efficient this harvest time. Only thing I would add, don't just use the big vehicles. Pull a sample from your farm truck, pull a sample from that vehicle that runs to town. You never know what you'll find. Folks, stay with us. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness when we return. Well, of course, America is a very big place, and every one of our states in this great country is engaged in agriculture. Each week, our friend Charlie Behrens joins us with the folks from Pivot Bio for the Agricultural States of America, and this week, we're talking New Mexico.
The United States of America can be very different from one state to another, but one thing every state has in common is agriculture.
Hey everyone, I'm Charlie Behrens and welcome to the Agricultural States of America. We're going to test your knowledge about the agriculture of different states and hopefully give you a bit of appreciation for all of the great things that farmers are producing across the country. Today we're talking about the state that's home to the oldest capital in the country and is nicknamed the Land of Enchantment. You still drawing a blank? All right, here's a gimme. It's like Mexico, but newer. New Mexico, good guess. Now, New Mexico has an incredibly diverse landscape, ranging from forested mountains in the north to a vast white sand desert in the west and the south. Fun fact, 6 of the 7 life zones found in the entire world exist in New Mexico. Now, if you're like me and don't know what life zones are, I did a little Google search, so you don't have to. Life zones are classified by vegetation types and vary by altitude and orientation to the sun. What that means is that depending on the elevation, there can be completely different terrains in a matter of feet. And yes, there will be a test at the end of this video, so I hope you're taking notes. For more than 2 centuries, New Mexico's economy was centered around cattle ranching and being a cowboy. This state ain't big enough for the 2 of us.
Ride 'em, cowboy.
And today, both are still a big business with nearly 25,000 farms or ranches in operation. In more recent years, dairy farming has taken a lead role though. Today, the state ranks 9th nationally for milk production and is on the top 5 for cheese production. Good for them. Sorry, that was cheesy. In one area, the state grows corn, wheat, alfalfa, hay, cotton, and about 400,000 pounds of onions every single year, ranking them 5th in the nation in onion production. That's nothing to cry about. Pretty diverse for a state that most people just assume is a giant desert. I mean, what can't this state produce? It's nuts. Speaking of which, New Mexico farmers grow pecans, pistachios, and peanuts that are processed and shipped all over the globe. So the next time you're throwing out an assorted nut bowl at your cocktail party, you can thank New Mexico. But Charlie, technically aren't peanuts legumes and pistachios seeds? Yeah, I know, but find a better transition, I dare you. Okay, back to it. New Mexico leads the nation in pecan production, along with the state of Georgia. In 2018, New Mexico reigned supreme with 91.1 million pounds of pecans produced. And that is a lot of pecan pie. Or pecan pie, no judgment. Now, if there's one crop New Mexico likes to hang its cowboy hat on, it's the chili pepper. It leads the nation for chili pepper production. On average, New Mexico produces 75% of the nation's chili peppers. And thankfully, they got that dairy production, because we're gonna need a lot of milk. Now, while some chili peppers are red hot, there are many varieties that can be grown. The chilies grown in New Mexico are called Hatch chili peppers, named for New Mexico peppers that are grown and harvested in the Hatch Valley region, affectionately referred to as the chili capital of the world. Tums sold separately. And each year during the Labor Day weekend, more than 30,000 people from around the country journey to Hatch, New Mexico for the Hatch Chili Festival, which celebrates the world-famous crop. All right, before I get going, I can't forget to mention that New Mexico has seen recent growth among organic and specialty farms. From vintage wine vineyards to niche crops like lavender, the New Mexico agricultural scene continues to grow. And now that I got the attention of all the Pinterest fanatics out there, you'll be happy to know that today there are over 150 certified organic farms across the state. All right, that's all the time we have for now, but you can always go to pivotbio.com/agstates and click on the show icon to explore more about the agriculture of your favorite states and test your knowledge to win prizes and more. We'll see you next time on the Agricultural States of America. I'm gonna go crack a couple pistachios. Why can't they crack all of them though? You know how some aren't like totally cracked and it's like, it's up to me now? You know, I can't handle that pressure in my life. I need them pre-cracked.
Well, thank you, Charlie. And as always, I learned something new when we highlight the ag production in these different states. I did not realize New Mexico had so much climatological difference, 6 of the 7 climate zones in New Mexico. That got me curious about their growing season. Well, it's pretty stunning. If you're in the northern part of New Mexico, you're up in the mountains, it's a little colder, growing season runs about 60 days. In the center part of the state, around Albuquerque and the Rio Grande Valley, your growing season is going to run about 110 days. You go farther south, down to the border with Mexico, you can get a 160-day growing season down there in southern New Mexico. And of course, a lot of those growing days are used to grow chilies. Charlie mentioned the importance of the Hatch chili across New Mexico, and in fact, New Mexico State University is home to the Chili Pepper Institute. If you've got questions about the origins or the agronomic history of chili peppers, that is a fantastic resource. And New Mexico State University, kind of the reason chili peppers are as commercial as they are. They developed the New Mexico No. 9 chili pepper back in the early 1900s, and that really encouraged commercialization across the state. We do love seeing what Charlie's brought for us, and if you want to try some chili pepper flavor, Jones Soda is making a Hatch chili and lime soda flavor. And give that a try if you want. Our thanks to Charlie with the Ag States of America, and folks, stick around. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness coming up when we return.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
We like to broaden our scope a little bit on This Week in Agribusiness from time to time, and we drop into the London offices of UPL Incorporated. Joining us this weekend, the Chief Executive Officer of UPL, Mike Frank. Good to see you again, sir.
Max, great to see you as well.
I understand your passport has been getting some new stamps here of late. You've been traveling quite a bit.
Yeah, Max, our business is very global, and so I do get out and visit our customers whenever I can. In the last 2 weeks, I spent a week in Australia, and then 4 or 5 days in China as well, and then back here in London just a couple days ago. And I'll be heading to North America end of next week, so I look forward to getting back to North America.
Your portfolio is quite diverse, as I recall. Herbicides, insecticides, fungicides over a wide range of crops, correct?
Yeah, Max, and so we're the 5th largest crop protection company globally. And our portfolio is it's probably the widest in the industry in terms of the number of active ingredients and registrations we have in our portfolio. Also, one of the things that makes us unique is we are a manufacturer, and so we manufacture about 70% of what we sell. Most of what we manufacture in the US or India, some in Colombia. So that's really our manufacturing footprint. We don't source as much from China as maybe the average company does in the industry. And then we're also really focused on innovation and biosolutions, and so hopefully we'll have some time to talk about those topics this morning as well.
As you zero in on your trip to North America, what are some of the things you will be visiting with producers about? You mentioned the biologicals.
Yeah, well, obviously we know that it's been a challenging year in many parts of the U.S., especially now with the dry conditions going on in much of the U.S. And so, yeah, look, our customers are distributors and retailers. Obviously, the end users are the farmers. And so I'll be spending time, across all 3 of those customer segments, really trying to understand, what can we do as a company to help farmers be more successful. We're very excited about some new products that we're introducing here in the next couple of years. We've got 3 new herbicides for the Midwest, 2 new fungicides that we're bringing, with really a focus on resistance management, as many farmers are dealing with that across weeds or insects or diseases. And so that's really a key part of our innovation, is to really help farmers manage resistance. And then biologicals, whether they be biosolutions for controls, like for example, we'll be introducing a new bionematicide next spring for soybean producers. We introduced it earlier this year in Brazil, so we'll be bringing it to North America as well. And then we have a wide range of biostimulants, really products that help improve soil quality, root health, and ultimately give plants a bit of extra strength, so that if you do get into a drought situation, often with these biostimulants, the plants have a better chance of surviving and thriving in those more challenging conditions.
We can't totally protect from drought, but you're bringing products that can sure go a long way toward helping maintain that yield, I gather. We really appreciate your spending time to join us here this weekend, sir.
Great to be with you again, Max. Take care.
You take care as well. Travel safely. Mike Frank, Chief Executive Officer there of UPL, joining us here on This Week in Agribusiness.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot Bio Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, it has been a move to an active weather system over the past couple of weeks. Meteorologist Greg Solier joins us now. And Greg, is it looking like that for the foreseeable future?
It continues on, and some remarkably cool air, Mike, for the time of year, expected to move into areas from the Divide on eastward. That certainly opens up another can of worms about growth rates, development rates. When do we move into reproductive stages for corn and beans? We'll get to all that in just a minute. Meanwhile, it's the western states of that hot ridge, which has been playing out in the southern parts of the plains, expected to retrograde on westward. We'll see that here in just a minute. Otherwise, pretty benign weather system into the Pacific Northwest. The soils, as you would expect for the time of year, dry, 65% or so dry and short, and very short for that matter. Washington State and through Oregon. The heat, the northern extent to about the Four Corners area. Here's this boundary separating some unusually cool air versus the summertime warmth from the Black Hills on southward, and very little significant change as it applies to the the Black Hills on westward, except the heat builds northward. The north end of the monsoon setup, maybe a couple of dry base thunderstorms, so you know that sparks fire potential. Meanwhile, cool air for the Canadian Prairie and points east and south. You get east of about Lake Winnipeg, some additional drought relief, easing the fire situation into the Canadian Prairie. Yeah, very hot. Very hot and very hot. You had all that hot 115-degree heat that was playing out in Texas. Well, it's West Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and in the central and southern valleys of California. Maybe a dry base thunderstorm, maybe a lightning strike or two. So we'll keep an eye on the fire potential along this boundary here. Maybe some active thunderstorm clusters over sections of the high plains. Boy, that drought monitor showing relief over the western half of the plains. Long way to go farther east and through parts of Kansas and Nebraska. The heat continues on West Texas, desert southwest into the valleys of California. A couple of thunderstorm clusters, central plains. Those could be heavy and severe later in the week, Mike.
Greg, as you get into the central part of the U.S., what do you expect to see next week?
Well, I tell you, it's been really chaotic. I hate to use the term Armageddonish, but they had that about a week to 10 days ago with that derecho as it swept out of Iowa into the Ohio Valley. Note the cooler air for the Canadian Prairie into the upper Midwest and down into the Ohio Valley and along this boundary of heat in the central plains, and the cool air from the Board of Trade on northward. You'll come up with a couple of weather systems and some pretty good coverage. Showers and thunderstorms. Told you the whole summertime season would not go this way, i.e. dryness and drought. And here it is, Nebraska Panhandle to about the I-80 corridor on southward. Some good coverage, showers and thunderstorms, and temperatures a number of degrees below average, easing stress in the back 40, slowing up crop growth and development as well. Here is the triple-digit heat from the big metroplex on westward in through Arizona. A couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms, Gulf Coast areas, and boy, those waters in the Gulf, Mike, are very warm, but so far, nothing cooking. That's a trademark of El Nino this time of the year.
Does any of that change as you look farther to the east, Greg?
The cool air is locked into position and likely to stay that way, at least here as we head through the first half to 3/4 of the month of July. Just a modest recovery. After that, we'll have the 4-weeker coming on up. Here's some shower activity. We need the rain as well. Added drought relief for the northeast and New England. Showers and thunderstorms eastern and southern Corn Belt. Here comes another wedge of cool air dropping across the northern Corn Belt and along the boundary of heat down south from the Ohio and southward, and the cool air up to the north. Good coverage, showers and thunderstorms for the Ohio Valley and points east and south as the mid to late week progresses. Here is the heat through central and western Texas, and the wet weather pattern is back into play across the southeastern part of the country, including Florida. But for now, both in the Atlantic and across the Gulf, the tropics are quite likely to stay that way here much of the summertime season.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot Bio-Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio-Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, we're talking weather with meteorologist Greg Solier. And Greg, from a precipitation standpoint, how does next week look?
It's more to come and more beneficial, timely rain, we hope, for the Corn Belt. And of course, rangeland and pasture lands will appreciate the rainfall too, minus, we hope, the derecho effect. I don't think we're done with that setup, by the way, as the summer season progresses. But in the immediate future, don't think so. Inch, maybe 2 for the Corn Belt. You betcha. Severe weather potential under a cold low here and along this boundary draped from the plains into the southeastern states. This is good news for the northeast of New England, and maybe a thunderstorm or two with tropical moisture feeding in out of sections of the Pacific. Mike, it'll be out there that we keep an eye on here as the season wears on.
All right, Greg. Well, the week of July 17th, what do you expect to see?
Look at the cool and cold air for July. El Nino likely to stick around, by the way, here for the next 6 to 8 months. That'll get us easily into the wintertime season. Below for much of the Corn Belt feels great. We'll see what crop production comes into play with these kind of temperatures here above over the southeastern part of the country and across the western states as well. And anytime you get this range of temperatures and this particular troughiness over the middle part of the country, it is a broad reach of above average moisture from the Canadian Prairie south to the Gulf Coast and eastward. Nothing across the Atlantic Basin. We'll keep an eye on the Pacific as the weeks we're on. Dry weather up and down the west coast.
Greg, does that enhanced cold stick around through the week of July 24th?
It'll moderate, but we'll get these little cool puddles of air that'll kind of rotate in from time to time. They will also contain moisture for the Canadian Prairie, so we anticipate a general improvement to the fire situation. The hot ridges here over this particular part of the country and that really compaction of temperatures get you get you two setups here. Showers and thunder across the southern Canadian Prairie, northern plains, Corn Belt to the eastern states. And again, we talked about these tropical lows. We're going to keep an eye with maybe one trying to come ashore into Baja and Old Mexico here towards the end part of the month.
Well, Greg, as we get into the month of August, what are you looking to see?
Basically, that cool air and troughiness right here lined up across the middle part of the country, lobes across the Canadian Prairie to the northeast of New England, the hot ridge for now, as it will be for this week. Retrogrades, fancy word, backs up to the west over the southwestern part of the country. All academic on how you're going to make the sausage here because it foretells a wet weather pattern. Pacific Northwest, much of the plains, Corn Belt locales. Told you this would not be going on the whole season. The dryness and drought-related issues. Hopefully the rains will matter. Dry down through the southeastern part of the country. An active weather pattern from Mexico and parts of the southwest into the new month.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
Well, we started this last week, and there were enough tractor, fender, radio memories to bring you more of them this week in Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. Well, those tractor radios, when they arrived, were all AMs back in the day, and then there were some that started showing up in the 70s with FM out there. There was a common denominator in many instances. They were bringing us news and sports and music that we could have up at the house and in the pickup truck, but for the first time in the field. And Luke Miller remembers this. He was in Northwest Illinois, and his dad was using a tractor radio out on a Minneapolis Moline G1000 there. Oh, loaders could be tough on tractors like this IH560 that Bill Stacy has in Illinois. Looks like the radio has been out there. It has had its share of work and maybe a little bit of abuse too. Oh, you can tell this radio is on the fender of an Alice Chalmers. Nicholas K. has this one on an AC200 in Michigan. Yeah, it said Learjet stereo in it. Nicholas said, yeah, it sounds high-tech. Well, it had a cassette player in it. And here's one on a John Deere G. Don Busing of Oklahoma has had this one working. I think he said it was a Motorola. And if you're able to look real close, I'm not sure you can see it on the television screen. I was examining it with a magnifying glass. You can see the antenna sticking up on that one. Well, we older guys have a lot of excuses for hearing problems. Tractor pulls, ear pods, old tractor radios. It allows us a little bit of an excuse for that maybe intentional hearing problem that comes up in the house sometimes. Well, let's find out what's coming in loud and clear that we have no problem hearing from Mark Stock at Big Iron Auctions.
Well, hi, Max. The July 12th online auction features self-propelled sprayers and dry fertilizer applicators. In Kennett, Missouri, Greenpoint Ag Holdings, LLC, will sell a John Deere R4038 self-propelled sprayer and a Rogator RG 1300 self-propelled dry fertilizer spreader. They also have a 1997 Freightliner dry fertilizer tender truck. Shane Schwager is from Orchard, Nebraska. They'll be selling a 2015 John Deere S680 Combine, 2013 Kuhn Knight RC 260 feed wagon, John Deere 1770 NT 24-row 30-inch planter, a 2020 year model Brent 1196 grain cart, also a 2013 Kenworth W900 semi-truck. William Kirkman is retiring by Atkins, Iowa. They'll sell a John Deere 4455 tractor, a Kinsey 3200 12-row 30 planter, John Deere 6150R mechanical front tractor, 2006 Case IH 2377 combine, and much more. Folks, the Big Iron Sullivan Auctioneers July and August auction catalogs are out. Over 60 auctions in 60 days, with new auctions added daily. We're also scheduling sales for November and December and into 2024. Call your rep today.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. Now it's time to meet one of those young leaders in the world of agriculture, and this week we're talking with Jordan Petrie. He's recently finished up his turn as the Virginia State FFA Vice President. Jordan, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about what prompted you to join FFA in the first place. Jordan?
So my two older brothers joined when they were in middle school, and I got to see all the really fun and exciting opportunities they had in the organization. And that pushed me to join as well. And I got to see all they did and participate in new activities as well. Just have a really fun time.
Well, and Jordan, I understand one of those things that you participated in and did well at was parliamentary procedure. Can you tell us, what does it take to be a winner at parliamentary procedure?
So really you have to have a very good team to win at parliamentary procedure, because as an individual you can do well, but if your team doesn't, you're not going to win. It's very much a team event. There isn't even individual rankings in the parliamentary procedure contest.
All right.
But beyond that, you have to really study as an individual, learn the material, and really read Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised 12th edition as well.
And was that parliamentary procedure something you got to put into practice during your year of service?
Not much during my state officer year, but my parliamentary procedure team did get to perform in front of our school board, which was really exciting.
So, Jordan, you have just ended your year of service as vice president there of Virginia State FFA. What were some of the highlights of your year of service?
So one of the greatest moments was definitely FFA week. We went to around 92 different schools over 8 days, met with thousands of members, and just had a whole bunch of fun teaching them about illuminating their strengths over just their own and their teammates. And then we also got to go internationally to Costa Rica as well in January, which was really exciting. We got to go with 75 other state officers across the country. So those are definitely probably my two favorite moments outside of state convention this year.
Some tremendous opportunities created through FFA. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us here today, and we wish you the best of luck in the future.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, folks, agriculture, of course, is a very engaging career. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of work both away from the farm and on the farm itself. And it also happens in rural areas where sometimes it can be tough to meet folks who maybe you want to spend more time with. It can be tough to build relationships in rural America. Well, help may soon be coming. Season 2 of Farmer Wants a Wife is looking for farmers, and we're going to be talking to the casting directors, Damon Colasso and Sandra Petco. Thank you both for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks for having us.
Hi. Let's talk about Farmer Wants a Wife. Perhaps our audience, maybe somebody missed it. Fill us in. What's the show about?
The show is ultimately a show about love. It's about helping those farmers out there that might not have access to the ladies that maybe somebody that lives in the city. So we help them and we bring the ladies to them, ultimately to find marriage, have a family, and start their new chapter of their lives.
We're looking for 4 farmers. So we have 4 bachelors that we feature. We feature their journey and their quest for love. And the women that we put on a show are women that we particularly find for these farmers. So it is a matchmaking. It's very, very, it's catered towards the farmers that we do put on our show. And it's all about their journey of finding love.
So last year you had the chance to follow 4 of them. Sandra, how did they react? How did they accept the programming?
I think every one of them had their own way of handling the situations. I think for all of them, it was a very new experience to be in front of 5 beautiful ladies that they chose, and ultimately the women chose them back to be there. So I think all of them had a different journey. I think if you want to get into specifics, I think Hunter was very open to the idea. He's a musician as well as a farmer, so he's very in touch with his feelings and his emotions and wears his heart on his sleeve, and I think he was all in from the start. And then you had somebody like Alan who it was very new to him, and he was very he was nervous around some of the women, which is okay, and I think that was really wonderful to see that, because that is true. I mean, men usually aren't the best at being able to handle 5 women at the same time. So he handled it like a normal guy would, I think.
That's true. That's true. Damon, I'm curious, as you look to cast this new season, what type of farmers are you looking to showcase on the program?
You work out in the field from sun up to sundown. We want you. If you're single, you're looking for love, you're ready for that next chapter in your life, please apply. We don't discriminate. We love all types all shapes and sizes, and ultimately we just want people who are ready for marriage and ready for a family.
And all ages and all different stages in their life. So whether you've never been in love, whether you've been in love a few times, whether you've been married, whether you have kids or no kids, I think whatever your journey is, whatever your story is, we want to hear it.
Sandra, tell us, what makes Farmer Wants a Wife different from all the other dating shows on TV?
Well, I think this show is really about marriages and children. I think there's a lot of other dating shows that are people who are just going on the show and perhaps willing to, wanting to up their Instagram followers. This show is not that. If you are truly looking for love, that is the story we want to tell. And, Farmer Wants a Wife has been worldwide. It's been on, I think, in 32 countries. We've had 180 marriages and 410 children come out of Farmer Wants a Wife. So I don't know who else can beat those numbers, okay? There's 410 children running around this planet because of Farmer Wants a Wife. So that is how it's different. It works. It truly, truly works in what it's trying to do. The name says it all.
Sandra, if we've got audience who are interested in applying, where should they go to do that?
Well, you could go to our website, farmerwantsawifecasting.com.
Well, we've been talking with the casting directors for Farmer Wants a Wife. That's Sandra Petco and Damon Colazzo. Remember, farmerwantsawifecasting.com if you want to throw your hat into that ring. Folks, thanks so much for joining us here this week on This Week in Agribusiness. We'll be back next week with more coverage of the news that moves the industry. Tune in then, same place, same time, right here.
This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.